Good evening, everybody. My name is Durran, as you can see, and I'm always been curious to see what's out there and to get involved. I'm a big believer in making things. So I'm just going to go quite quickly through this bit and then get on to the final bit. So basically, I had someone come to the studio and they said, I've got some obsidian, can you carve it for me? And I tried, and I destroyed all my equipment trying to do it for them, because it's really, really strong. And even the diamond tools couldn't do it. So I cleaned it, and I put it away. And then one night, I had a friend come, and I said, why don't we put it in the kiln and see what happens? So we put it in the kiln, and it went to a really high temperature. And I opened the kiln at high temperature, and it did nothing. So I thought, okay, let's go higher. So we went higher. We went to about 1400 degrees, and what happened was that there was a really strong smell came out of the kiln, and we'd had a few beers by then, and we realized that we were actually moving the obsidian, which is kind of a volcanic lava, and it started moving, and this really strange smell came, and he was saying, that's sort of dinosaur smell, I think. And so we opened the kiln, because there's quite a lot of smoke coming out then, and it had actually grown 6 times the size of what I put in. And so anyway, about 3 days later, because you have to anneal glass, we realized that I took it out of the kiln, and I went to clean it, and I went to get a cup of tea, and I left the tap running in the sink, and it was floating on top of the water. So we'd made floating glass. So and I did lots of projects around that. If you keep going. And this is just taking it back. Keep going. So we made some pieces. And it was all playing around. And I'm basically investigating always with the material. And I get asked to do lots of different projects. Because basically, when you work with glass, you are actually... When you work with glass, you're actually... not only do you have to work out the artistic, but also you have to work out the alchemy, and it's very technically based. So this is just projects, and I thought I'd show you this because this leads up to where we're going. So we can blow glass, and you can slump glass, and these are just all different projects that we're doing. And sometimes they're small projects, and sometimes they're like 5-story pieces. So if you just keep going. So lots of different, this is kind of like what I normally do, and then I got some other things. Keep going. So this basically was, it's a little bit of a connection. So then, sorry, if you stop there. So basically, how you gain knowledge is by traveling, and I traveled a lot. I was always invited to go to different glass factories all over the world to attend symposiums, and you get to meet other artists, and you get to work with techniques that you don't normally exposed to. And I realized that every time I visited a factory, about 3 or 4 months later, it would close down, and that community would disappear, and those skills would disappear, and it was all moving away from the UK across Eastern Europe to Russia. And then I realized the next stop would be China. So I went to Russia, to this factory that's on a 25-kilometer site, and I thought, I've got to film this because this will disappear. So if you just do another shot. So it's about the journey going there, and it's about the glass factory. And it's about what happens in that space, and the fact of if you do the next slide, the fact is that you can have an environment outside that's in minus 40, but in the factory it can be plus 50. And the reason why these factories just started to disappear is because they are using incredible amount of energy. There are huge amounts of manpower to produce your glasses. One day, I saw a door open in the factory, and I looked inside the factory, and it was all the IKEA glasses that are produced for Europe in this one room. So I just started to think that this seemed like the wrong way around, and that we should be thinking about how to do things locally. So the film was quite an inspiration to the next project. If you just keep going, these are just images from the factory. So if you just go back one. So the factory was 250 years old, and so they built the factory and then they built the town around it. So of course when the factory disappears, then the community is left there. But in the factory there was lots and lots of glass, from the glasses in the canteen to the glasses in the walls, the fabric of the factory. Go again. I mean, there was this old, it was an old Soviet-built factory. If you could just pause there. So if you just go back. It was an old Soviet factory, and the workers had this great saying. They said, you know, Mr. Durran, we had a really beautiful system here. We used to pretend to work, and the factory used to pretend to pay us, and everyone was happy. So if you go on to the... So all these skills are disappearing. It was all getting into production, and that's how into automated production, which means that you have 3 people in the factory rather than thousands of people in the factory. It's a destiny, but then it feels like we should be looking at trying to find solutions. So we decided to make a challenge, and that's what I'm working on at the moment, that will happen in the summer, by taking waste glass and seeing what we can do with it. And so basically, the concept was that we approach companies that have got a waste glass material, because councils will stop taking your glass pretty soon. Because the EU law is going to change. You can't put any lead-based glass into the ground because there's leaching of lead. EU laws are coming out next year that you won't be able to store it above ground. So now they're realizing they're going to have to store it in warehouses, which are really expensive. And we just say, look, we can make a product out of it. So we've been involved in a number of projects, and it's about what we can do with glass, because we don't have to make any more glass. There's enough glass out there in the world. It just needs to be upcycled. So we did a number of small challenges before, and it was taking bottles. Quite an interesting story. We had a brewery in Liverpool, because we did a European Capital of Culture event, and they rang us up and said, look, we can supply you with the bottles for your challenge, which was within 24 hours. We melt a bottle, we make it into something, and we sell it in a department store within 24 hours, which is a push when it comes to making glass. So we said, fine, great, can you send us down some bottles? And they sent down 3,000 bottles of beer, but they were full. So we had to drink some of them to melt them. So the challenge is for us is that we have all this fantastic knowledge about glass, but what can we do with it? Because at the moment, waste glass is about £15 a tonne. So nobody really wants to process it, and hasn't got a value. And what we have to do is try and find a value to it. And that's the challenge. Let's move on. So we're just playing with ideas, and yeah. And if you go to glasseatchallenge.com, you'll see all the more information about it. Okay. So the next image. Okay, so if you could just wait there. So this is my nose. And basically what happened was that I'm known for doing lots of different projects, but this one, I had a researcher from the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead came to the studio, and she said to me, is it possible, because everyone tells me it's not, but is it possible that we could make something in glass that has a negative form in it of a human nose? And I said, yeah, it's absolutely possible. She said, well, everyone tells us it's not possible. I said, well, that's the glass industry, but actually creative makers, artists, they know how to do that. So they said, it'd be brilliant. And she looked around the studio and she said, it'd be brilliant if you came into the hospital, because the head of departments and the surgeons don't believe that it's possible. So I went for a meeting at the hospital, and they got very excited. I took some samples and they got very excited. And I said to them, what nose? What would be the first nose you'd like me to try out and test? And they said, oh, we'd like your nose. So I spent the rest of the talk with my hand over my nose. But anyway, we took a rubber mold of my nose, and then we basically made it into a positive in plaster and quartz, and then I manipulated the glass in the kiln over it and made the mold. It was a tryout, it was a test. I gave the glass to the hospital thinking that would probably be the end of it. Anyway, about a month later, I got a call from the hospital to say, look, we'd really like you to come in to have a meeting. And we think it works really well. And, could you do ears? Could you do veins? Could you do throats? Could you do voice boxes? And I said, yeah, I could do that. So I went into the hospital and I saw a tank in the hospital. And basically what they're doing is they're making a synthetic material that allows cells to be grown within the material, and they can feed the cells, and that eventually it can be transplanted into patients. And what I didn't realize is that noses, for the majority of people, there's a high level of cancer of the nose. I didn't realize that. And there's a lot of people out there that don't want to have just a plastic nose. They'd rather not have a nose. So if we can make really accurate moldings for them, the more accurate we can make it, the more it represents, it's good for the patient, because if you think about it, if you saw something that you didn't recognize, you reject it, and that's been the problems. So from an artistic point of view, I've always been trying to be as accurate as I possibly can. Even if it's got a little twist, a little curve in it, and I think, I could straighten that out, maybe his wife wouldn't want that. So what happened was I walked into the hospital and I saw 20 of my noses growing in a tank. And I thought, I wish I had a Coke habit. So what we did was we developed from that. I mean, obviously they're in research and development at the moment with this process, but they are working with a live patient, as they like to say. And the process with that is it takes about 2 years. So from the initial moldings that we've made, they've been able to do the scaffolding of the nose within the glass. Glass is a perfect material, by the way, because it's inert. You can sterilize it, and you can see cell growth going on through the glass because of the transparency qualities of glass. So it's like the perfect material. And basically what happens is it takes about 3 to 4 months to prepare the nose with the patient's cells in it and the cells being fed. And then what they do then is they cut the wrist and they insert a balloon into the wrist. And it takes about 3 months to raise the skin up. I was telling my kids it was that way, and they said, no, that would be a hairy nose. And I said, no, it's that side. And you put the nose inside because you need the skin and the blood vessels. And that takes about a year on the arm to grow. And from that, they then transplant it to the patient's face without nostrils, because that's how you get infections. So for about a year, they don't have nostrils. And then they're able to open up the nostrils, and then they do a hair transplant at the end, to put the hairs inside it. So that's what they're currently doing at the moment. But we've gone on to do voice boxes, throats. There's lots of different systems. There's only 3 organs that they can't do. Sorry, do a slide. There's only three organs. There's only 3 organs that they can't do. Obviously, the brain, the spleen, and the liver. I think pretty much everything else they can do replicas of it, and we're working out molding systems for it. And what's interesting about it from the glass point of view, and it's very interesting from a medical point of view, but what's interesting from a glass point of view is the fact that it's going to be a local procedure. Eventually, it will become a standard operation, and it will be a local procedure, and you'll need a local glass person to manipulate the glass to make it the moldings for it, because we all have our own internal measurements, and that's the beauty of craft, is the fact that you can have someone who is able to do that. And we're going on and developing, and we're hopefully doing the whole body. Like I say, there's a few organs that we won't be doing. From an artistic point of view, I was invited to do the exhibition called The Power of Making at the V&A, and we were asked to propose an installation. If you'd like to, we were asked to prepare an installation within the V&A, within this exhibition, that would be like a figure 1, figure 2, figure 3 explanation, 3-dimensionally, of what we were doing. And so I wrote what we planned to do and sent it to the V&A. And we were proposing to actually grow a nose within the V&A, and we got an email back from the V&A saying that they were worried about the level of culture in the work, which is brilliant. Okay. So this is just really an explanation of what we do with the glass. And like I say, our part is not so big obviously in the whole process of what they're doing at the hospital, but it's still an important part. And this is really what's happening here. It's happening here in London, it's not happening anywhere else. Next slide. Initially, we tried lots of different techniques. Here's me attempting to blow my own nose. Gotta get that one. And then there were sort of slump moulds and it's just a level accuracy. This is for the multi-nose approach. So basically it's ongoing, and what's interesting from my point of view is because I work with a lot of artists and designers who are very protective about what they're doing, whereas in the medical world there seems to be much more of a dialogue and much more exchanges of ideas and things. If I get asked to do something by an artist, then they want to see it and they want to do samples and they want to have big explanations and they want to come and see me late at night and all that sort of stuff. If I can see designers, they want me to have absolutely nothing to do with it name-wise, they just want me to make it for them. Whereas with the hospital it says, yeah, we've got a patient, we need it next week. And so it happens straight away and really fast, and I kind of like that aspect of working and that approach to working. So this is the material that they've come up with that's allowing them to do all these different processes. It's a polymer base. We try to. It is very difficult because there's lots of undercuts in the molding, so we have to do quite a lot of different pieces to put together. And also I had to realize I had to make it for people who don't know normally handle glass, so I had to kind of basically make it a bit foolproof in some ways. And this is just them in the bioreactor just doing the cell growth in this part. So, I mean, this is just some images that were supplied by the hospital. We did a talk at the House of Commons about innovation and design about creative industries, and this is one of the things that we presented, and I didn't know they put this slide in, so you can see the procedure. And what was interesting with the throat one is that it has to be incredibly accurate, because I don't know if you remember when you're a child and you have a blade of grass between your thumbs and you can blow and you make a sound. That's kind of what the voice box is based around. And I thought that we should really make it very accurate, like between the two thumbs, we should make it really accurate. And they went, no, just do it. But then I kind of thought, okay, the patient would be happy to be able to speak again, but it might be a high voice or a low voice, and they might, I think we should try to be as accurate as we can. And this is just a description process of how they did the process. And if you do the next slide, and this is basically one of the installations that we did for the V&A exhibition. So, sorry, if you go back to that slide. So basically, on the left-hand box, you've got, because we work now, sometimes what we do with the patients now is we've not had the opportunity to do rubber moldings or anything, so we have to work from 3D scans. So we have to do a 3D printing to then allow us to then get the positives so that we can start to create the molds in the glass. Thank you very much.